The day.
Yeah, tonight, should environmental groups be able to challenge mining developments, or should they be stopped from what Attorney General George Brandis has described as waging lawfare and sabotaging mining projects? Senator Brandis announced that the government is planning to repeal Section 487 of the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Act, which gives environmental groups the right to mount legal challenge to environmental approvals for projects. This follows the case of this proposed Carmichael coal mine in Queensland. The federal court ruled earlier this month that Environment Minister Greg Hunt had breached the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act because he hadn't considered advice on the impact of the $16 billion mine on the yakka skink and the ornamental snake. The case was taken to court by Mackay Conservation Group, but it's groups like this which the federal government wants to stop from being able to mount similar challenges. Incidentally, the Carmichael coal mine may still go ahead. The federal court ruling just requires the Environment Minister to reconsider his environmental approval, taking the skink and the snake into account. But the government now wants to restrict the right to appeal to individuals or groups which are directly affected by a proposed development.
Lines are now open. Call 1300 800 222.
The government is arguing that environmental groups are engaging in what's becoming known as lawfare, or using the courts to hinder and stall proposed developments. The Industry Minister, Ian Macfarlane, is saying that this particular case could just be the beginning.
Very well orchestrated and highly funded campaign that will see the end of coal mining development in Australia.
He went on to say that if people are living 1,600 kilometres away from a coal mine or a development proposal, then they should have no right to prevent that proposal from providing an economic boost to the region. But that if there are environmental issues, then people living close to the proposal would be able to raise their concerns. And the government's been backed by the Minerals Council of Australia. Here's Chief Executive Brendan Pearson.
I think we've got to be clear here. This is a calculated strategy. They talked about it a couple of years ago. They are implementing it. It's designed to game legal and approvals processes to stop projects.
So what do you think? Should only those people directly impacted by a proposal have the right to challenge it? Is the system so accessible that green groups are engaging in legal sabotage, as the Prime Minister has described it? Or are potential threats by the environment the right for everyone to take action over, no matter how messy or protracted the legal proceedings might be? What if you've been involved in an action, maybe over a proposed development, either on the side supporting the proposal or have some thoughts about taking action that tried to derail it? Looks like the government will struggle to find support in the Senate for repealing Section 487, which was introduced by the Howard government 15 years ago. Labor's environment spokesman Mark Butler is saying it's a pathetic thought bubble devised by the government to distract us from their current political woes.
Lines are now open. Call 1300 800 222.
You wouldn't be surprised to know that the Greens are definitely not going to be supporting the change. Senators Nick Xenophon and Glenn Lazarus are both concerned about the proposal. Here's what Nick Xenophon had to say.
If something breaks the law, if something is against the law, then taking away the rights of ordinary citizens to challenge that is a real concern.
So what do you think? Should the people who take legal action over the approvals process for mining developments be restricted to only people who are directly affected in that area? Or should the wider community maintain a right to take action if, in the Carmichael case, they believe a law has been breached? It's one of those very difficult situations, and only a small breach, but it really has stopped the project. And the industry minister says, look, we need this to go ahead, and this is just a small impediment for a much greater good for the local population here. There's been disputed claims over how many jobs are at risk here. One was suspecting that, some quote that there could be 10,000 jobs involved, but others are saying, well, that's a bit inflated. But, we certainly do need jobs at the moment, and, should this impediment be removed?
Lines are now open. Call 1300 800 222.
To have a talk about this, Douglas, you believe these projects aren't just the concern of the neighbours in the local area. It's a community concern.
I am absolutely convinced of that, Tony. Ross Gittings in today's Sydney Morning Herald quoted an American who said that the economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment. Now, if the aquifer in the Galilee Basin is contaminated, then that will affect every person in Australia. So for the Attorney General to say that this is legal sabotage because citizens are saying, excuse me, no, we object to this and we'll take legal methods to prevent it, is absolutely beggars belief.
It's been a difficult issue at the moment for the National Party because, it's that double-edged sword of the, mining development, yes, but particularly with the, fracking, it does potentially impact the farming side of the equation as well. So one wonders whether you have to be a local person to complain about that.
Well, yes, I take what the point you make there, but also to rip up, food bowl land for open cut mining, surely that is just, yes, we need jobs.
So is that a community concern rather than just the local area,
Absolutely. And I think green groups, of which I'm not a member, I think they have an inalienable right to do that. Now, I was part of the Tantawangalo State Forest protest, and we were taken to court for the illegal use of a radio. The magistrate found that there was a provision in the law that said at the time that any citizen can use the radio when it is an emergency without being licensed. And we considered it to be an emergency, and we got off on that technicality. And
sometimes sometimes the argument is as thin as a boarding house scrape of butter, but it is what it is. It's
yes.
There to be interpreted.
It's there to be interpreted, and I know that the mining industry thinks that Australia just runs on mines, but we've got to get smarter. We've got to get away from just digging up Australia and exporting it. We've got to do other things. And when something endangers the environment and the habitable environment and the natural environment, I think these groups are quite right to take action.
You wonder whether also coal is a good economic prospect just at the moment, particularly at its current price. And I know India has expressed, a need for it, but you just wonder whether this Carmichael coal mine will get underway anyway because of the economic problems.
I don't think so. I noticed that a whole lot of major banks have pulled out of it. I noticed that my superannuation fund has divested all its shares in things like that, and I think the writing's on the wall.
Thanks, Douglas. Great to hear from you. Jennifer, you're saying environmental protection is everybody's concern. It's just not to the local area.
Absolutely. I mean, the hypocrisy of this government is breathtaking. When Brazil wanted to clear its forests for economic development, who screamed the loudest and longest? Australia. I mean, the same with the killing of whales in the ocean. Who screams the loudest and longest in any ocean anywhere? Australia. I mean, the betterment of this planet doesn't belong to some economic company sitting in a filing cabinet somewhere. It belongs to people. And sadly, it's only small environmental groups and small protest groups that very often do it with volunteer labour, no funding. they are the ones that really show care for this planet. If there's a dollar to be made somewhere, the massive, huge economic conglomerations just come in and want to beat everybody round the head. And it's just hypocritical to say that if you are a small protest group in Queensland, you can't fight against some horrendous development in Western Australia or somewhere else. I mean, the government just fought tooth and nail in the United Nations Environment Program about the clearing of forests in Brazil, and that's way on the other side of the Pacific Ocean.
And also, I mean, the Lock the Gate project that has been going across many areas of the country is activism in that similar form. You know, they're there saying we want to protect the environment, we want to protect our land.
In 50 years' time, Tony, when coal is no longer the principal means of generating power on this planet, the world is going to thank some of these little tiny volunteer groups that go out and fight for some rights. I mean, coal will eventually disappear as the main source of generating power on this planet. It has to, otherwise we're all doomed. So, I mean, it's just hypocritical of the government, absolutely.
Thank you very much for that. Jack, you want to say that the courts don't exist purely as a benefit for industry?
No, mate, they don't. They're for everyone, and what they're trying to do, or what the government's trying to do now, is just silence any little person so the corporations can do what they like. They don't care about the environment. Look at how much they've stuffed up with the fracking up in Queensland. The media doesn't cover any of that, and that's stuffed for the next 80 or 100 years already now.
I think there has always been a bit of concern with this particular project too because of the exit point for the coal as well at Abbott Point. You know, a lot of people are a little bit concerned about that being, you know, in a little too close to the Great Barrier Reef.
Yeah, and look what's happened before. They've had ships leak oil up there. What's happened with that? Nothing. No one went to jail. No one, you know, there's been no recovery effort or clean-up effort. It just got swept away under the table. You know, so what's going to happen with the coal?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, you know, jobs are a priority just at the moment, but you sort of, you know, wonder whether this is going to help very much at all. They tell me that, you know, the number of jobs that are going to be created by this in Australia are probably pretty limited.
Well, you look at the jobs. Now, it's already known that the big companies are dodging paying tax. So they get subsidised to come here and build here anyway. So is one of their jobs really worth anything to it? Well, there's no paid on it. They're subsidised to employ people, and they're destroying the environment. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Good to hear from you, mate. Thanks for that. David from Graceville points out what food is actually grown in the Galilee Basin. Well, we've a couple of issues that have overflowed. One of them is, you know, that mine that is in northern New South Wales that is in the electorate of the Agriculture Minister, Barnaby Joyce. That has, not relating to the geckos, but that was a local area protest about that particular water quality. David, you say changing the legislation will have all sorts of implications for farmers.
Yes, Tony. Remember, remote communities are a lifestyle as far as this government is concerned, and small holdings farmers can not rely on the National Party to support and protect them in any way, shape or form. The change in this legislation will mean that it will reduce the abilities of the farmers to object to CNG and gasification projects such as Lock the Gate, and also to the coal mining in New South Wales in Barnaby Joyce's jurisdiction because of the major changes to the water table, that will occur with the mining. And basically the government is trying to use the fact that they were either incompetent or inept in writing the legislation. When they issued the permit to mine, they did not follow the letter of the law, and they gave out a permit illegally to the company. So they're trying to turn this around and at the same time remove legislation that allows protection for the environment.
An SMS that we received just says, Tony, if legal responsibility and interests are only for those directly involved, why do we have World Heritage?
Yes, Tony. Well, look at it from this perspective. I live in Brisbane. So, okay, if the barrier reef gets damaged, that reduces the number of tourists going to the Great Barrier Reef. Okay, that reduces the income into Queensland, and that reduces the amount of money that the Queensland government can spend on services. So can I not have a say in what happens within my own state, within my own country? You know, it's ridiculous to say that you have to be the neighbour to the actual project before you can actually make an objection. This is purely the government trying to cover up their incompetence, and also try and change the legislation so that farmers and other groups don't have a say in protecting their land. If you're not a corporate farmer, if you're a small holdings farmer, you can forget any protection from this government.
Great to hear from you, mate. We have a word with Brad. Brad, you're saying that the actual right to protest and challenge decisions is a fundamental right of our society, and you know, it should be okay under the law.
Yeah, how you going, Tony? I'm actually
good, mate.
Not moving tonight, so probably usually when I get on, I fade out. I never.
You're clear as a bell, Brad.
Yeah, look, I just think we're going down a very, very slippery road when we start doing this. The government's got a track record of changing legislations we see with the state and federal parliament. If they come up against something that they don't like or that's not to an advantage, basically comes down to the dollar bill, they just change legislation. 5 to midnight, all in favour, let's go. Put our hand up for $130,000 across the board pay rise and walk out, you know, with a clean conscience. Now, it's just a symptom of the way not only our government, but most of these Western governments or so-called civilised countries are going. We're kowtowing and we're catering to the big business who really are running the world at the present, and the governments are basically, you know, a puppet, as far as I can see. And
well, I mean, the mining industry has been given some benefits. I mean, the mining tax was axed, and they have had considerable assist over the last little while with the downturn. But you know, I suppose it's only, you know, a small matter, but you know, there's two species that, you know, are technically under threat, and at least they should meet you know, reasonably stringent environmental guidelines, I would have thought.
Well, look, they've got the people that are trying to you know, to save these animals. They've got to have some kind of an angle, and that's to me, that's just an angle for a far more important, bigger picture. Now, look, Tony, I might be missing something, and please help me, or there might be someone out there that can help me, right? Now, we've just come through the biggest mining boom in the country's history, at record prices for our coal. We've had 15 years of record prices. We've been digging it up, and what are we currently at? China about $300 billion.
Well,
now, look, I'm just missing the math there, somewhere, Tony. Now, if we can't have money in the bank after 15 years at record prices, how the hell are we going to make any money out of a $55 margin? And just one other thing I'd like to say, Tony, when you look at these big mining towns, like when I was young, Muswellbrook was a big mining town. Now, if you go to a lot of these mining towns, and even the regional Queensland, central Queensland mining towns, the towns themselves are sick. There's no money in the town.
Yeah.
The money and when they set these mines up, the government fudges the figures, as they always do. They say, we're going to create 2,000 jobs at such and such a site. Okay, we'll create 2,000 jobs when we set the mine up, but after the mine's set up, everything is becoming automated these days. Those workers are gone. And the other thing they're always banging on about, skilled workers, how do we know these workers are even going to be Australian, Tony? And not the 457 workers, you know?
Well, I dare say that, it's going to be an Indian company that's running this operation, so I dare say that quite a few 457s could come in as a result of that.
Just one 30-second thing, Tony.
Yep.
Bronwyn Bishop with her little joyrides.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't we forgotten about a major joyride that was going on with our treasurer? There was a tiny little story and it went away. And to me, it's such a coincidence how that went away when Bronwyn's story came out. That Joe was, doing it pretty tough, staying in his wife's house and charging the Australian population, per $250 per night.
It's interesting times we live in, Brad, and thank you for sharing. Nilly, you want a quick word about this too. You can't understand why the government is continuing to back such an unpopular project.
Yeah, well, the Liberal government is obviously backed by the mining industry and the oil industry, and that's backed by Murdoch as well, so there's another tie-in there as well. And that's the only reason they're doing it. There's no other reason. And of course, the absolute arrogance of the Australian people. Like, we're minions, we don't matter.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously we do need a mining industry. That is, part of the makeup. But, it has to be done. It has to be done because it churns economy for us, It's,
you know what? If we back the renewables, we will have jobs galore. And we will have it without the pollution that we have. Once you set up the solar panels or the wind industry, it'll stay there. It won't move out. You establish a town around making the windmill farms, the wind farms, they're not going to move. They're going to stay there. You establish a town around solar panels, they're not going to move. They're going to stay there. And that industry will go forever. We will need solar panels and we will need windmill things from now until the earth explodes and we're no longer here.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody the other day, and a lot of the new solar panels that are the new generation of them are much smaller and much more resilient, and getting a lot more positive stories on that front. So certainly it will be a big part of the 21st century makeup.
I have them on my roof, and this quarter I saved myself $170.
Well done. That's
and I got them on the government rebate. I was one of the last people to apply. I saw a full-page ad in the paper about 5 years ago. I went, what? I didn't know about this. And I rang up, and I just didn't believe it. I thought it was a scam. I didn't believe it. It was too good to be true. And I got them installed. And then because I did it, my neighbours next door, they did it as well. But unfortunately, they missed out on the rebate. But they still got them installed.
Damn. All right, thanks for that, Nellie. Great to hear from you. Peter, you were saying when it comes to coal projects, the CO2 released really does impact everybody.
Yes, of course it does, Tony.
Yeah.
How are you tonight?
Good, mates. All the better for hearing from you.
Thank you for that.
What do you got to say about this one? It's one of those one, as you're saying, it's not so much even the local area people. It's one of those things. It's an international issue.
Well, once you get CO2 released in the atmosphere, it's not just a matter of whether I live next door to the coal mine, or it could be that you're in India or China or something, and you might as well say that there are universal principles of duty of care. The duty of care doesn't extend just to my neighbour. The duty of care extends all over the world. If we're civilised people. You might as well say that the Holocaust only matters to people who live next door to them. And if you didn't live next door to the Holocaust, you're not responsible. I mean, what is Abbott and his coalition government about? What principles of morality are they trying to promote?
Well, what we try to do, I think, as a nation is, yes, have mining projects, but to keep them as clean and green as we can. And, a lot of people in industry are saying, it is too tough to have projects done under the Australian system, but I mean, it's just for the long-term benefit of the country if we get it right.
Well, I think the scientists decided that carbon emissions are on the way out. So what does the coalition government mean when it says that we need the Chinese government coming in and promoting the one? What's the name of it?
Sorry, what this is the project of the Carmichael mine in Queensland?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, if we can't, if a citizen can't anywhere in the world, not just Australia, make a protest against something that's morally wrong or say economically wrong. But anyway, I just think that that the coalition government saying that to protest against certain economic developments, you must live next door or must be immediately affected by it is just a nonsense argument, Tony.
I understand the point you make. Glenn, you are saying it's just not the environmental damage at the current price and supply levels. It's not making a lot of sense.
Well, the thing about it is BHP and Xstrata's closed up quite a number of coal mines in Queensland. They've already got the infrastructure. They've already done the damage to the environment by developing the mines, and they're not being utilised because they're not profitable. Now, if they're not profitable, why is an Indian company coming in to decimate an area which is the food bowl of a huge food production area and the ability to damage the artesian water basin?
The Glencore, the Swiss company that owns a lot of the coal mines here.
Well, Glencore owns Xstrata.
Yeah, they're in all sorts of strife. I mean, you only had to look at their financial results today to know that it's not a boom at the moment.
No, but what I'm getting at, there's already coal producing availability in Queensland and New South Wales. Now, what's the difference in the price per tonne that the Indians are going to save themselves? Instead of buying from the existing producers that have already got existing mines, what are they going to save themselves? $1 a tonne, $2 a tonne, $3 a tonne? Is that differential in the cost of supplying coal to India by an Indian company who's going to be supplying coal to their parent company at cost, so they won't be paying any tax? You know, you only pay tax when you make a profit, and if you're selling to your parent company at cost, then you're not making profit, so you're not putting much money as far as tax goes into the system. There is an existing workforce that's been laid off for these other mines that have closed down or slowed down, so the mining jobs that are so-called being created by this other mine aren't really, it's just a transfer from one company's employment sheet to another. So the reality is if you're going to decimate a huge amount of area, for what's the cost benefit to the country? $1 a tonne, $2 a tonne, $3 a tonne, can't be much more than that because the margins are so low as it is. The existing producers with the existing mines in the existing infrastructure are struggling, and therefore why develop another mine that could be, in say 2 or 3 years' time, I mean, it's selling to its own parent company, and they're saving money that way. That's the only saving. I mean, coal's been our biggest single export dollar value earner for the last 30 years until iron ore overtook it about 5 years ago.
Glenn, part of the problem has been that it's just taken them a long time to have that Abbott Point project approved simply because it's in such a sensitive area. I mean, it is, not that far from the Great Barrier Reef, and they had to really prove that it was worthwhile. But there's a hell of a lot of infrastructure you've got to put in to service this mine as well. Rail tracks, all sorts of things. It's a very big dollar spend.
Yeah, but it's the government that's providing the infrastructure, not the mining company. It's we, the taxpayer. We've already paid for the infrastructure that's up at Gladstone. We've paid for the other infrastructure and the other coal exporting ports. Now, that infrastructure's there and it's not being utilised because we're going to open up another port and pay for the infrastructure somewhere else and have a potential to damage the environment because an Indian company wants to save itself $1, $2 or $3 a tonne from developing that mine as opposed from buying from the existing suppliers. I mean, how stupid are we? How many mines do we have to produce, or how many mines do we have to develop across the country and leave other ones that are already there producing and they can't do it economically enough. Is somebody trying to make too much profit out of the existing coal price, or we're being manipulated internationally? You know, what we have to understand is Australia has developed the gold industry worldwide, and we're the best and most proficient of extracting gold, and our systems are being used around the world. And we've got 5 kids sitting there at the New York Stock Exchange playing with computers, buying and selling forward currency on gold futures, and they determine the viability of an industry in Australia. This is what's wrong. We can be as efficient as we can do what we can for the environment, we can be the best in the world at it, but our economy is so small and our currency is so small. 5 kids sitting on the New York Stock Exchange can make industry viable or non-viable in Australia, regardless of how technologically efficient we are, and this is the problem we have at hand. Too much power by the banks and too much power by the finance industry that's manipulating the stock exchange.
You speak a lot of sense, Glenn. Thank you very much for that. Good to hear from you, mate. Annette, you say removing legal channels actually encourages civil disobedience.
Yes, it will. Yeah. I'm really pleased that the Adani coal mine has gone, and I believe it has. I think it was always smoke and mirrors, because basically Adani, I looked at the Indian stock market, and Adani was making money on the promises of the Queensland government's infrastructure. And anyway,
yeah. I should just point out that one of our SMS people have said, look, the Queensland ALP government backs the Adani project.
Okay.
So, he was suggesting that this is an ABC attack on the Abbott government exclusively.
Whoever backs it, I am going to fight it. I'm 55, I've got children, and basically I believe the scientists, 99.9% of peer-reviewed science on climate change basically brings it back to coal mining, fracking, tar sands. It's the things that we're doing, and that affects all of us. And I have actually been arrested a few times. The last time I shut down the port of Newcastle and allegedly stopped 14 coal trains. And the magistrate said to me, everyone agrees with you, and if they don't, they should. And I was stunned. I was standing up there in court, and I thought, this magistrate agrees with me. And I got fined $400 for stopping 14 coal trains. And there's an awful lot of railway line from the Carmichael mine to the port at the Great Barrier Reef. And basically, there are people out there like me who don't see any point in there not being a future for our children, for biodiversity. We want the world. We want it to continue. I don't want it to go down to microbial level, which is what it will do.
Yeah. All right, mate. Thank you very much, Annette. Great to hear from you. And you're saying energy and mining companies need to do more community education.
Well, I think they do, Tony. And I spent 6 years up in Eastern Queensland, based in Roma, and one of the key aspects of the company I worked for, I won't name them, it was education of the community, and the landholders up there have really worked in with the company, and at the end the benefits to them were very good. But ultimately, if we shuttle these projects down, it's going to cost us a hell of a lot. Our bills will go up. There's a lot of things to consider, but education is certainly the key for this.
What do you think about the idea that the government's put forward to repeal that Section 487 of the Environmental Protection Act? I mean, will that make a difference?
I don't think they should. I mean, it was put in there. It was put in there by the Howard government, and it was put in there after a long and drawn out process. And I think that it should stay. I think it's a leveller, and look, it's just another hurdle. And as Clive Palmer said, if companies lose, we shouldn't just change the law for that. I think that it's there for a reason. Certainly, you have to look at the environmental aspects of things. And the company I work with spent a hell of a lot of time and money on getting the experts in and getting it right. And that's why they were able to proceed and continue to do so. But, you know, if you play by the rules and you do it right, you know, you should have a good outcome.
It's just an interesting timing, Ian. You know, coal prices have been, as a couple of people pointed out, record lows, and it just seems like an odd time to be going into this venture, which, you know, will be quite expensive to set up, I'd imagine.
Certainly, the infrastructure costs would be certainly high. But I suppose if you're looking, you know, be either side of politics, look at if putting yourself in the chair. You're in government, and there's the prospect of mass employment benefits, community benefits. You'd have to be looking at it, you know, more than once. And one of the things with these, you know, mining towns, I look back to one of the comments made earlier about, you know, mining towns, how they're not what they were. Well, you know, Roma in Queensland was cattle producing country, still is, coexisted with the CSG, and the benefits to that town, you know, with infrastructure, buildings, airports, you name it, you know, businesses, all that sort of thing, you know, they are a spike. And same with coal fields and anything else is a spike for a community. It shouldn't be relied upon forever.
Yeah, and as you point out, you've really got to take the community with you. If you're going to do this project, you've got to make sure that everybody's on side, or as many as you can get on side.
Well, you do, and you've got to be absolutely transparent, and that's one of the to be successful, you have to be transparent. And yeah, as I say, the company I work for, there were things they wanted to do, and they came up against, and they had to readjust their thinking and their strategies. And work around it, or you know, go off in another direction. And they had to, you know, take it on the chin. And they, look, I'm sure that, you know, they didn't want to, but they did, and that's probably why they were successful and continue to be so.
Yeah, and a better outcome for all. Ian, thanks so much for that. Great to hear from you. You've had the final word. I'm terribly sorry to the callers we didn't get to. We tried as many as we could. It is quite a complex issue, and we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens with the legislation. Looking like it's going to be hard to get through the Senate. There's two building an opposition to this change to the legislation, but it looks like the government may put it up at some point in the not distant future. It is the Nightlife.